fortunate enough to be in Barcelona for something called the IoT World Congress. So Mark Kwame spoke a little bit about the Internet of Things today, and we had done some analysis on this industry. We went to talk to some companies in Barcelona. We also went to learn. And while I'm trying to listen to the speakers, and there's guys from MIT and all kinds of places talking way over an economic developer's head, there was one guy that took the stage that translated all of that technology into what does it mean in the economy, what does it mean in our communities, and more importantly, what does it mean in our daily lives. So I'd like to welcome John Ellis to the stage. John has a new book out that has a provocative title about the $0 car, but it really is truly about how big data is transforming our lives, our communities, and our economy right before us. And so I'm excited to hear his message, and then Jim and I are going to come back up at the end and maybe offer some final reflections. Please welcome John Ellis to the stage. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Columbus. Hello. All right, I'm going to try something. We're going to see if it works. All right, 2 letters. I get a response? Ready? Am I? Ooh. Hey, all right, good. It's exactly what I thought was supposed to happen. Excellent. OH. All right. Good afternoon, Columbus. My name is John, and we're going to have a little conversation about something we call the $0 car. Now, what I have in my hand here is a timer because I've been told that I stand between you and the end of the day. Yeah, not drinks or anything, but the end of the day. And I want to make sure I stay on time. But what we're going to talk about is how transportation and how big data are going to transform the world of economic development. And we're going to do it through some slides, and we're going to do it then through Q&A. I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to open up for Q&A. If you do not ask me a question, I have a long list of questions that I'm going to ask you, and you are not going to like it, because I teach at another university that has 2 letters, ND, and I'm used to crowds giving me grief. Okay? So let's go down this path together. So who am I? I am not a car guy. I am what we call a software developer. That is, I am the guy that writes software that sometimes you all say, oh my gosh, how was this or what was this? I started my career at Motorola about 30 years ago, building software for that thing that we call the cellular system. In fact, I was part of the team that put the first thing on the internet. It was a vending machine inside of Motorola, and we wanted to hack it and basically get free, well, it wasn't free necessarily, but food and drink in ways that the vendor wasn't necessarily prepared to deliver to us. Notwithstanding what you see or hear in front of you today, I actually grew up in Mexico, speak a couple different languages, and had the pleasure of living in China shortly after Tiananmen Square. And so a lot of people started asking me, hey, how do I do business effectively in these foreign lands? And so I started Ellis & Associates as a training company to sort of teach people the question of how do I do business effectively in. But the 2 things that actually bring us here today, the first is this thing called open source software. For those of you who are technologists, you know what I mean, but for those of you who are not, there are 2 different ways to build software. One's called proprietary. You know that sort of maybe as Microsoft, partly sometimes IBM. It's proprietary, it's closed, it's to them and theirs. You do not get to look at it or see how it was created. The other is considered open, and there's an entire industry built around it. In fact, our friends from Amazon, it is quoted to say they couldn't exist today without open source software. A few of us at Motorola started asking questions very similar to questions asked in ancient times. How many colors of a car could I have? Well, you could have as many colors as you want so long as they were all black. And so a lot of us started asking questions saying, well, wait a minute, could we change this thing? Could we do something with it? And so a few of us took this radical step to create a Linux version for cell phone, and we in fact created the first Linux-based cell phone in the world out of Motorola. Today you know that as Android, or to a certain extent iOS. But Motorola was the first in the early 200s. Sorry, in the early 2000s. Wow, 200, holy cow. I actually look good for my age, don't I? Yeah. It's that OH thing that's getting me all confused here. OH! All right. Then shortly after that, a few of us started saying, well, wait a minute. We don't like the color black. We like multiple different colors. And in fact, we don't necessarily like all the software that comes from Motorola. Could we allow others to put third party, i.e. not our software on it? Could we allow a flourishing economy to be created by putting software on a product that was never intended to be there necessarily? And so we created the first ever third-party developer program for mobile devices. You know that today is the app economy, the iTunes store, the Google store, the Amazon store for apps. But back in the mid-2000s, back in the mid-2000s, it was an anathema for a public corporation like Motorola to do that. After 21 years, I left. I was doing my thing on my own, and Ford found me. And they said, hey, we want to write a software strategy paper for the connected car. We want to learn how to make money, how to connect it, and how to manage this. So I wrote the paper. They liked it so much that they hired me then as a global technologist. Basically means I was the highest level software executive at the corporation. And then for 3 years, I did what we had done basically in the mobile device business. We blew it all up. We tried to do something differently. So we've wanted to go and say, hey, could we personalize the car? Could we build the car physically as it is today, but could we personalize it? Could we allow the person who buys the car to take this very personal device that they spend almost 24 hours a day with? Depending on what age group you are absolutely spending 24 hours a day with it. Could we bring that into the car? And so we built technology and we did it. And then we went and radically went into front of Alan Mulally. We said, we need to give this away. We need to teach the auto industry how to do this. Alan wasn't 100% sure what we were talking about, but he said, go forth and do it. And so we did, and a few of us started traveling the world, and we got a lot of good things from it. We learned all sorts of languages, we got good food, we got hotel points, and we learned how to say F you in 14 languages. Because no one could believe that Ford was going to give something away like that. But 2 companies listened to us. Those 2 companies are Apple and Google, and they created the products that you know today as Android Auto and Apple's CarPlay. So for those of you in the Economic Development Office, if you want to know where Google and Apple are going to go next year, follow me, because they seem to be following me. After 3 years of basically butting heads with the corporate culture that was Ford, we amicably agreed to separate ways. I went my way, they went theirs. And today, we're now a 10-person firm traveling the world, and we talk about basically business model disruption that's coming or is already here with the technology that we now know as sort of 3D printing, transportation 2.0, this idea of different ways of doing business, and what does it mean to the economies around the world? So that's who I am. Now, earlier today talked about Gordon Moore. He wrote a cool book. It was a really cool book. This is Andy Grove, actually, sorry. Andy Grove wrote a cool book based on Gordon Moore's work called Only the Paranoid Survive. I'm going to talk to you today. What I'm going to talk to you about, you're going to walk away with a feeling in your gut. And so I'm going to give you an option. You can walk away feeling scared, feeling fear, in which case you're frozen. That's the human response to fear, is to freeze. Or you can characterize it as paranoia. Paranoia should motivate you. Paranoia should power you through that instantaneous fear and get you prepared for what's coming. We are in some very interesting times. There are some very cool things ahead of us. I encourage you to feel paranoia. It's okay, spend about 5 minutes feeling fear, but then recharacterize it as paranoia, because we have a lot of cool stuff that's coming. So, let's start. A few friends and I formed a think tank a number of years ago to start looking at some very deep questions. What happens when? What happens when the price of electricity goes to nearly zero? What happens when human beings no longer drive? What happens when we destroy the idea of the individually owned car business model? So today what I want to do, and the motivation for the conversation in the book, is what happens when the $0 economy intersects with transportation. So let's start for a second about what is the $0 economy. And it starts back in 1704. The very first newspaper ever to run what we now today call an ad, published an advert claiming property in Long Island for sale. A few years later, Benjamin Franklin began publishing a paper based on a big insert of these new things called ads. And thus was born what we know today as the subsidized advertising model. And for 300 plus years, that is how the information industry predominantly worked. Subsidized publication of information by selling advertising. And then in 1998, September, Larry Page and Sergey Brin incorporated a small little company called Google. And Google had one mission at the time: to organize the seemingly infinite amount of information that existed in the world. And they did a fantastic job of doing so. So well, in fact, that in that year, PC Magazine said they have the uncanny ability to deliver the exact result
I'm looking for. And they won the Top Company of the Year award. In the early 2000s, all of a sudden, Larry and Sergey began getting pressure from their investors. You have to make money. And so they began to explore, tentatively and reluctantly, the idea of advertising. And they started something called AdWords. The idea being that when you search for something, simultaneous to your result, we're going to put some ads that are relevant on the side. They started it out as a small trial with 350 companies. They introduced it, and it became an immediate success. You entered a word, you got information about that, but more importantly, advertising came up. And if you clicked on it, the advertising went live. And thus was born what they know now as the Google AdWords economy. And this was an amazing implication. They weren't the first, but they were the first to take a great product, information in terms of search, and be able to apply it in terms of subsidized marketing. And then they began to realize, well, wait a minute, search is just but a tool. People have lots of problems in their world. Let's build tools to always keep them using Google. And so you see an incredible portfolio of product created by Google specifically for the purpose of keeping you captive to them. And these tools provide you great value. They're an amazing value. You use them each and every day. They don't ask for a single cent from you. In fact, many call them free. But they're not free. You give up eyeball time, and you give up data about yourself to Google. And Google uses that data to actually target better and better advertising and to fund more and more tool research. In fact, last year, at the end, close of 16, $90.6 billion was what Google reported. And it reported it because they have the most unique and specific way to deliver that information that is appropriate for an advertiser to a consumer at the appropriate time with the highest click-through convertible rate. Meaning, if I put this word in front of you or an opportunity, the likelihood of you saying yes is high. And advertisers respond. But because it is a transaction, I argue that it is absolutely something to be valued. So let's go look at what that might look like. How does it really work? And this is always fascinating. I do this story and people are like, holy cow. So for those of us, like maybe my Amazon friends, you can close your ears for this. But for the rest of you, here's how this magical system works. You insert yourself into a browser and you start searching for things. Well, when we were at Ford, we were trying to figure out why was Google coming to Ford. And so I helped put a white paper together, and we studied. We took one of my colleagues, and we took the machine, and we took a service called Privacy Fix, and we installed it. And what it does is it looks at your history, and it looks at what's going on and where you're at. And what we were able to do is that for this person, his search for a period of time yielded these icons. This is where he went. This is what he was doing. This is where he was going over a period of time. And what we did is with that information get passed off to a company called Trefis.com. At this point, I should probably tell you, all of the slides and all of the information I'm giving, names, numbers, and everything, will actually come to you courtesy of Columbus 2020. We'll be publishing it sometime probably next week. So you can take notes, but everything I'm saying will actually be in the notes as well. So we publish this information to Trefis. Trefis.com is a lot like Morningstar. They look at AdWord values, so that AdWord system we talked about. So you give them a word, and they can tell you a time and a date that that word traded for $1. So they can go, hey, on this date, at this time, this word, and we can tell you exactly what that word traded for in the AdWord economy. And in this particular case for my colleague, we estimated that his year-long presence online, just that one machine, doing some stuff with just browsing, was worth about $565 of hard cold cash from the brands on the right to Google. But more importantly than that, it was interesting to note that over 25% of the brands on the right also use something called Google Analytics, this other tool. This is a tool to understand why did somebody come to you. So this is an online store. Why did the person come into the store? Where were they? What did they browse? What did they look at? What did they touch? What did they almost buy? What were they thinking about when they bought? Why did they abandon the buy? Where did they leave? Oh, when they left, where did they go? All of that information. And what's really cool, Google makes it available for free. But there's a little term of condition thing that whatever you get, they get. And so they get $565 from my friend, plus the fact of everything that he was doing online from 25% of the vendors. Oh, but like the Ginsu Knives commercial, it doesn't stop there. We've got a like button from Facebook. And 94% of the sites use Facebook's like button, thumb up, thumb down. Guess what? It's free, except for the fact that the terms and conditions say, if you decide to incorporate this code, anything you get, we get. So for 94% of the transaction, Mr. Mark Zuckerberg and his friends at Facebook, for doing nothing more than giving you this or this, received everything about my colleague and what he was doing online, where he was going, what he was thinking about. Now, what's very interesting about this is he is just one person and one machine. He is a family of 4, a wife and 2 kids. At the time we did the study, the kids were 10 and 12. Today, the kids are 12 and 14. So actually, I take it back. They were 9 and 11, and now they're 12 and 14. And so we went to every machine. We went to his laptop, his desktop, his wife's machines. We went to the kids' games. He is all in on Google and their ecosystem. And so we extrapolated all this and ran it, and we came up with something on the order of about $5,500 in value to Google for the year for my friend, the 4-person family from Midwest Chicago, Northwest suburbs, certainly not in the top 1%, more of the midline American. This is why Google does what it does, Facebook does what it does, Instagram and others. This is the $0 economy. Now what's really interesting is because it is a transaction, I keep telling people to stop using the word free. So one of the motivations for writing the book was to introduce people to the $0 economy. The idea that there is a falsity to the name free that we then rely on, and we begin to build a bias in terms of business models that we create. By calling it $0, we at least inherently think there's something more in value there than free. What's interesting to note is Google is not the only $0 company. There are many of them. Some of them aren't even American. And they're coming hard and fast, and they're copying each other. And they're beginning to recognize that, yes, there is value. There is value in knowing who you are and where you're going and where you're coming from. Guess what? Those 4 things are movement. Movement equals transportation. This is why these companies are so fascinated by what we call the backbone of America, our transportation network. Now, how are they coming into this company? How are they coming in? Google doesn't make cars. Facebook doesn't make cars. Oh, they're doing something really cool. This is a collection of head units, those Bill center screens, from our favorite companies from around the world. Over 25 companies building cars. They call them connected, or they call them advanced, or whatever the words might be. Point being is that all the cool cats are doing it, so everybody's got one. But because of the individual-owned business model, every OEM feels that they have to compete differently, so there are 25 different solutions. And per Consumer Reports, the Kelley Blue Book, it is one of the it is in the top 3 reasons for why people are pissed off about their car experience. It's hard. I don't understand it. What does that icon mean? What am I doing? Holy crap, I'm traveling at 70 miles an hour trying to push a button and it's not doing it. I'm trying to do a widen or a screen and it's not doing it. What's going on? So Apple or Google come in and say, oh, you OEMs, so sad. So sad. I think I can say that. You suck at software. But we're cool. We've got UIs, interfaces that people love. Google and Apple predominantly almost represent more than 98% of all the devices in the world. The game is over. The user interface is either iOS, Apple, or Android from Google. Now, it could change. Unlikely, but it could change, especially as China begins to come onto the world stage. But for right now, they come in and they say, oh, so sad, Mr. OEM. Take a little bit of software from us for free. Stick it in your head unit. We'll make your head unit look amazing. They'll use the interface that they know and love. It's incredible. And it costs you nothing. It's free. What OEM's not going to do that? Now, these are the same OEMs that taught me how to say FU 14 languages 3 years earlier. And now they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Look at this lemonade coming out of Mountain View. Cupertino's great in the middle of the winter. They flew me out. Oh my God, they absolutely are rocking the world. And so they did. And they got it. One solution, all vehicles. Anecdotal little story, since I got a few extra minutes from my friend Kenny. Geneva Auto Show 2014. Apple went first, and they launched CarPlay into the marketplace. On the stage, they had 2 vehicles. The first vehicle was about a $29,000, $30,000 Kia. Beautiful vehicle. Had a beautiful interface. Another vehicle that was next door. I won't ask because it's a public room, but can you guess what it was? You could probably, but it was a Porsche. It's beautiful. I'm not a car guy. I don't even know what it was. I mean, I'm going to throw a model number out there. I'm not going to do it for fear of making an embarrassment. But it was a very high-end, over $100,000 Porsche. Also with the same interface. And the journalist got caught on record. Let's go see the Apple cars. You can laugh. Just like the president said, I'm going to do that. Cue laugh. Cue the laughter. OH. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. Let's go see the Apple cars. A $29,000 car and a $100,000 car, and they both got reduced to being the Apple car. Now you should be laughing a little bit more like, okay, that paranoia fear, John, I think I understand where you're going. But hey, OEMs, it's free, and your user is going to love it. Guess what? All the brands are gone. All gone. So now Apple and Google are doing something that's really cool. But when you're saying to yourself, but wait, why? I mean, why would they do this? It cost them money to build this. It really did. And it costs them money to maintain it. They're a publicly traded corporation. They're not charities. Why did they do it? Here's why they did it. This is a relatively older, it's about end of 2015, early 2016, about a 50, 60 sensor-based car. Today we have about a 100-based sensor car. But these are the sensors that are in cars. And automotive engineers are putting them in cars left, right, and center every day, each and every day, every year, more and more sensors in the cars. And they're doing it for lots of different reasons. Start with safety. Make the drive safer. Keep the occupants safe. Increase the convenience and the comfort of the car. Lots of different reasons. Automotive engineers will continue to contemplate and integrate technology for their purposes, which is the convenience of the driver and the owner of the vehicle and safety. Now, the safety problem is a big problem. Year-end last year, 40,200 lives were lost on U.S. roadways due to crashes. 94% of those crashes were caused by human error. 40,200 lives, souls lost on U.S. roadways last year is equivalent to 2 fully loaded 747s falling out of the sky each and every week for an entire year. If a 747 fell out tomorrow, we'd take notice. If 2 fell out within a week, we'd be like, what the hell? And if the 3rd fell, we'd shut down the air system. 40,200 lives lost. OEMs are pushing hard to work on that problem by adding sensors. So the automotive engineer looks at that and says, that's an amazing car. But then my friends from the West Coast come in and say, well, wait a minute. If I just take 6 sensors and I couple them all together, what do you have there? We have the wiper, the rain anemometer, the clock, headlight, traction control, and, the barometer. The barometer is used for gas, to burn gas at a better oxygenation level. Somebody from Google comes in, they're not a car guy or a car girl, they're like, but wait a minute, those 6 sensors are actually accurate weather. In fact, they're so accurate, they're better than the weather stations. And I know exactly the weather at a very precise point in time where people need to know about weather. But it doesn't stop there. What if I take a few other sensors, again, designed for safety, but I look at them differently? I now have a very accurate reason for why isn't your car moving at a particular speed limit. I can turn on cameras, I can look, I can solve traffic problems by actually querying the car to understand why aren't you moving at the suggested or appropriate speed limit. And let me start with the microphone. Designed by engineers to keep your hands on the wheel, eyes on the road. Holy cow, it is an insightful and an amazing interface into what's happening in the cabin. People talk to their cars, people talk to people. Imagine what we could learn if we turned on our microphones. Again, the engineers are like, dude, that was put there to keep people safe. I mean, yeah, I know. Good for you. Google looks at it and says, dude, I can make money. So, how does that work? Let's take a look at that little story. So those were all the packages. They go back to the same colors. And again, you're going to get all these so you can look at the story later. But just imagine if you could take package one was the weather, and you could figure out that I could sell it for one-time life value. This vehicle will be on the road for 11, 12, 13 years. And so I'm thinking maybe I could sell for $6,000. Someone might be willing to buy $6,000 one-time purchase from this car who's going to travel around and spend $6,000. And again, in the write-up, you'll see where the sources and the numbers come from. Package 2 was traffic. Again, we put down for $4,000. Package 3 was, in fact, voice, et cetera, et cetera. So I got $60,000 of sensor data that I could sell from this car. And who buys it? NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. They literally spend taxpayers' money to figure out weather. They build weather stations and they try and figure out where they go, and then due to legislative issues, they got them all over the place, not necessarily where people are. And they've argued that if they could have more accurate, more detailed, more localized weather, they could do things to avoid the terrible tragedies that were Irma and Harvey, or even before that, Sandy. And guess what? It's cheaper to buy sensor probe data from a car than it is to build a weather station, so they're all in. Every state has a requirement to drive their roadways, to ensure drivability of the road system. But every state said, well, wait a minute, if I could buy accurate real-time data of what's going on in the road, I don't have to drive all of it. I can just drive parts of it to fulfill my mandate for the state and focus most of my money on fixing that which is broken. They're all in. And then, of course, you got your insurance companies who absolutely knew what's going on. But more importantly than anything, for the first time ever, we got brands who are now interested. Where were you? Where are you going? And how can I influence you? Google has shown the world that if I can give the appropriate interruption with value, you will likely respond to it. So you will likely, instead of going straight from point A to point B, you'll take the deviation to go buy that highly discounted Starbucks coffee. And you're laughing. That's good. OH. All right, good. But it doesn't have to be just Starbucks. This is why brands want to know. The movement of goods, people, and services is the foundational element of all economic development. And he or she that can control it and influence it is, in essence, a god. Now, how does this actually really work? Well, if that exactly is available to us, imagine that you're buying your vehicle, $40,000 vehicle, and as you're sitting there contemplating whether or not you're going to buy the added warranty package and the underbody and all the other stuff, your man says, hey, on and before and half the company XYZ, we want to do a one-time, lifetime buy of weather, and we're going to give you a $3,000 right here, right off the top price discount. All you got to do is sign the paper that says, we're authorized to do that. And you're like, heck yeah. Weather? I don't even know what that is. Go ahead, take it. Give me $3,000. So that's $37,000. And then you get ready to leave, and you're like, no, I am the gift that keeps on giving. I can do something for traffic and improve your life and congestion. Oh, hell yeah, I'll take that for $2,000. Oh, heck yeah, sign me up. And then we go onto the mic, and guess what? We can help monitor your life and your awareness, and we can make life so good to you. Just give us ultimate access to be able to access the microphone. Oh, heck yeah, sign up. And every time I do this, people say, dude, there are no way people are going to do that. By a show of hands, how many people have ever uploaded or downloaded an application to their iPhone or to the Android device and actually read every single permission release that was listed? Raise by hand if you've done that. Okay, so the answer is you too would potentially take this opportunity. Woo, $3,000, yes. So for those of you who are wide awake and with me, we have now taken the car all the way down to zero. Because the car sensors are packages that gifts keep on giving. Actually, I'm going to go back here for a second. Cool story, because again, I got time for my friend Kenny. Anecdotal time, Tesla. One of the only companies, actually the only company that could do what I'm about to tell you. A fancy engineer sitting in Palo Alto suddenly was made aware of this terrible tragedy that happens when you leave children, underage, as well as animals in a car that's locked, and it gets hot. It's tragedy. Hundreds of people lose their lives a year. And so this engineer, as smart as he was, said, well, wait a minute. I got sensors in the seats that tell me when to blow airbags or if I got to put a seatbelt on. And because we got this fancy package called the approach thing, I got movement in the car cabin that I could detect. And I got a thermometer that can detect the air, and it's always testing. And I got a modem connection that I can push some software if I can't think of how to do this. Oh, wow, and I'm an electric vehicle because I can turn on a circuit. So he developed a feature called cabin overheat protection mode. And what it does is really cool. Software release 8.0 that got pushed in sort of the end of December last year. Any car, Model S, built in 2012 and later, now suddenly has cabin overheat protection mode. Simply put, when the temperature hits and all the triggers go, air starts circulating, and a note and a warning goes off to the owner. He didn't think about that when the car was built. He didn't understand it. That is a feature that came later. Those sensors in the car represent gifts that keep on giving if you think differently each and every year. So right now we're all the way down to zero, and I don't know how we get there with some of the other packages. We explored a little bit in the book, but we're going to get there because it is a gift that keeps on giving. And for those of you that were wide awake, we sold $60,000 in data on the previous slide. I've given $40,000 in a subsidy to make sure that I get my $0 car, get everyone happy and excited to me. Oh, look at the silver lining over here, $0 car, which means I still have a $20,000 for me. So I actually sold a $40,000 car and also made an additional $20,000. The gift that keeps on giving, the $0 car. Secondarily, you all saw the value of the ecosystem. For those of you that are systems people, there is this thing called the network effect. If we can keep you in the network expands dramatically. It is not a linear expansion. It may be exponential or geometric. It is absolutely a big expansion. And so I know that if I can keep you in, I can earn more from you. So if it's $5,500 your estimate worth, I'll just write the check every year. Just write the check. Buy the car, write the check, and I'll send it to you. Whoa. Woohoo! That was a gift from MI. Yeah. Come on. OH! All right. And look at the brands. And now you can start seeing where people and companies are coming from. Now, for so very long, cities and businesses that were not Google and Apple have sat on the sidelines going, holy crap, I could do that. Or how do I do that? Or why not me? How do I get in? Where and when me? And then we came along with this really, really cool idea called the IoT. Oh, well, let's go. We can connect all sorts of stuff and create all sorts of data. And now all of a sudden, cities and corporations are not on the sidelines. Hell no, jumping in with both feet. And they're coming hard and they're coming fast. How fast and how hard? Here we go. Oh, do I not have it? I might not have it. Oh. Maybe I don't. Okay. Let me see. Oh, yep, yeah. Okay, I do. Coming hard and coming, I didn't even know my own slide, sorry. Coming hard and coming fast. And they're recognizing this phrase where data is the new oil. They see what's going on with Google and Apple. They see that Tesla was valued more than Ford. Tesla produces significantly less cars, yet they're valued more. Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook are moving towards the $1 trillion mark in terms of valuation and opportunity. Why? Because of this. The idea of connecting things is so profound. So let's talk about that in terms of our city and where we're at in opportunity by asking, how many things are there? Has anyone here ever asked, what is a thing in the Internet of Things? Or you all just know what it is? My 12-year-old, when I did this presentation, or she was 10 at the time, was like, Dad, what's a thing? I mean, she was 10, but then I know it's an Internet of Thing. So we did a little exercise. We walked around the house, and we started counting all the things in our house. Water tanks, hot water tanks, washing machine, dishwashing machine. But then we said, honey, and I said, stop. I said, let's start counting the dishes, and the forks, and the cups, the sheets on our bed, the beds themselves, couches, TVs. Oh, yeah, all of them. And we stopped at 1,000 because she was only 10. Stopped at 1,000. And then I went off and I went to friends of mine at the local village, and I said, so how many things are in this city? How many things are in the city? And we started counting everything, water, pipes, intersections, everything. And we stopped at 1 million because he was a city official. Sorry. We stopped at 1 million. OH! All right. Man, that's a get out of jail free card. Are you kidding? I'm going to have to only speak in Ohio from now on because that's the only thing I'm going to be able to get to. Yeah. We stopped at 1 million. So then I went out and look at census data. 35,000 cities at the close of 2016. Almost 125 million households. So if you do it all up and add all the math, and you can figure it all out, there are over 160 or almost 160 billion things just in the U.S. This is why everybody wants in. Everybody. Now, imagine for a second, though, that we go back to that dealer where we're buying the car, and we say, you know what? Thank you, but no thank you. I want to buy the $40,000 car. I don't want your $3,000, $2,000, $5,000 subsidy. I don't. I want to buy the $40,000 car. Now, why would somebody do that? Well, what if they don't want their data to be actually taken? What if they don't want that data to be used, to be translated, to be absolutely used on, to be amplified, to help go to the bottom line? What if they say, you know what, I'm going to buy the full service offering? And so under a contract, we write a full service offer contract. Guess what we've just done? We've created what we call the big red button business model. You literally have purchased your privacy. You've bought privacy. That product will not, cannot, shall not ever communicate about you. Now, That idea of privacy as a product offends some people who think that privacy is free or that privacy is a right. We don't have time on the stage to go into it. We can go into it in Q&A if you'd like. But I would encourage you to start looking at the U.S. Constitution and others. Privacy is actually not a right. Because to be a right implies that there is an obligation on somebody else's side to actually make sure that your right is completely fulfilled and always available to you. So the idea of maybe buying privacy, of treating privacy as a product, actually allows us to take consumer-oriented, already existing frameworks and begin to manage the data that is at the essence and heart of privacy in a way that our laws and our businesses already know about. If we get a privacy breach, it's a product liability issue, which we know how to take. It's not a cybersecurity issue. It's a product liability issue. Now, people keep asking me, John, all this hinges on autonomy. All this hinges on the movement of goods and services. How fast is autonomy coming? And here we go. Ready? This is Easter morning, year 1900, Fifth Avenue, New York. I'm going to ask you right now, please find me the car. It's right there. Now, 13 years later, same corner, same morning, Easter morning, now I'm going to ask you to find me the horse. There's one. Ladies and gentlemen, when you put together the power of economics behind a societal benefit of saving lives, and then you introduce the economic fortitude to actually create it, this will happen. This is not a question of if, this is going to be a question of when. And the when is far faster than people think. Now, we talk about this in the car, we talk about this in the book, there's others. There are other issues that are behind this in Transportation 2.0. If you're interested in it, I encourage you certainly to read the book. You can find it online or whatnot. But for right now, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time and effort. Questions are open. Remember, if you don't ask, I will ask. And I know how to ask because I'm from ND. Oh, come on, OH. Thank you very much.
I've got a question. Over here.
Oh, sorry.
Who do you see, and by the way, thank you for your presentation. That was great.
Thank you.
Who do you see as the early adopters in the automotive side? Where you're going to see, I mean, I just bought a new car. I did not get an offer of $0 to buy that car.
I know.
When is that coming, and how quickly can I tell my wife not to buy a car?
So, for those of you who didn't hear it, when is it coming? This is a concept model. Will you ever be able to get to a $0 car? You know what? It is questionable. What we're doing in terms of this and why I put the title in it is to provoke people into understanding that there isn't something free in terms of what underpins it, number one. Number two is that you actually are the owner and the purveyor of your own data. We have not ever really had that conversation. Yes, it may be a little too late, but that's where the conversation has to start now. If it's a little too late now, it's absolutely too late tomorrow. So we should start that conversation now. But number three, and probably more importantly, we need to have a very serious conversation, especially from a city or sort of societal standpoint, of what does it mean to be so fully connected with so much data going on? What do we, the cities, have, or what do we, the municipalities, have to offer? And how do we make sure that what gets done is equitable? Equitable in terms of for the citizenry, as opposed to for just the publicly traded corporations. So can you get a $0 car? Not yet, but there are models out there. You can go get cars in Santa Monica that are fully loaded with billboards. You go get the car, you drive the car. If the billboards are all on it, your drive is free. Well, $0. It's a $0 drive. You're just promoting advertising while you're out there. So people are playing with the model, but as identified here, we're not quite there yet. Yes?
So where do you see in rural areas where there's not a lot of connectivity with these cars being able to communicate? I mean, how do you see that being impacted areas where they don't have that network?
I'm sorry, how do I see what?
In rural areas where they don't have a network that's connected, how do you see that impacting this?
So, for those who didn't hear the question, how do we see this? Well, I'll say autonomy. How do we see all this moving where we have areas that don't have connectivity? So I believe that, I mean, others have talked about, Adam Jonas is probably the most interesting one from Bloomberg. Morgan Stanley, apologies. Adam Jonas from Morgan Stanley. He's got a title of a slide saying, "We've already been here." And what he does is he takes you back in time to the introduction of electricity. And he starts showing how electricity started forming in smaller neighborhoods and local neighborhoods. And as the electricity became more and more prevalent, neighborhoods would get together, you'd be able to create substations. So the grid that we have today is an evolution of sort of that movement. He does not believe that this happens overnight. In fact, most of the people that talk about autonomy or some of this connectivity actually believe it will happen in dense city centers and potentially stop there. It may never roll out. That may be the case. In which case, we're going to have some issues on, do we build products for use outside, and then when they come inside, do they have to move back and forth? The idea behind connectivity, though, is an interesting one, and it is one of the ones that's driving a lot of the conversations with respect to transportation. Most people in AT&T and Verizon build networks where people are. But guess what? The car industry builds cars for people to drive where there are no people. So there is a sort of dichotomy there. It's not answered yet. Problem is nobody really actually has good answers, and we have yet to solve some of the societal horizontal issues, which is one of the conversations we were having earlier today with some of the economic development folk. Don't get caught up in the shiny object called the technology and others. Understand sort of the equitable things that must be in place regardless of the implementation, and then we can start figuring out the conversation to how do we actually regulate that, or how do we make sure that that happens. Yep.
How do you feel the repeal of net neutrality, like, will that affect this type of innovation or this type of networking going forward?
So net neutrality. Let me add by a show of hands. Who hasn't heard? Well, no. Raise your hand if you've heard of net neutrality. Okay, a lot more people. Okay, good. So given that you know or at least understand what it is, do I think it will be this harbinger of lack of innovation if net neutrality is... So wait, if net neutrality stays, will it be a harbinger of lack of innovation? I don't think so, because net neutrality has been the de facto default, and we've had the innovation today. You saw Mark earlier today, $2 trillion of economic value created while net neutrality was in place. No one has yet been able to put forward what the economic argument would be if net neutrality is repealed. Would it be $2, $3, $4, or $5 trillion? Some of you in the audience have experience with some of the telcos who, because of the power, can punish you. I don't know. I mean, I have a personal opinion. I want to share that. This is not a political conversation. What I'm unfortunate about is that we don't have enough balanced conversation on either side as to what is really neutrality, what really is the benefit, and how does this work. I personally have a belief that sole power, or power in a very localized few, is not very good. It's not very good for us. It's not very good for our democratic sort of system. So for me, I would err on the side of keeping net neutrality solely because of that. But again, I don't know all the economics. But I do know that we're not spending enough time, and not enough people are being educated on it. There's another question here? Yes.
I'm just curious, what does a cellular infrastructure look like to be able to handle this kind of data for the longer term?
Yeah. So the question was, what does a cellular network look like to handle this kind of data? So let's start from the beginning. There's quotes that are up there. You'll hear quotes from Intel, 4 terabytes of data being generated a day per car. Big numbers, huge numbers. And they're not necessarily completely incorrect. There's nuances. Cars generate a lot of data. The problem is most of the data is internal to itself. So the real value is what we can do when we go off of it. You have pointed out to something, though. The cellular network has a capacity limit. No matter what we build, 4G, 5G, 6G, 7G, we will never be able to take 245 million cars and start pumping 4 terabytes in an upward direction. It's just not going to happen. We will melt networks. So what you are seeing, though, is then conversations about what do you do? What kind of data do you push? What kind of data is stored? What kind of data do you wait until the car is maybe in a personal network at home and can be pumped by Wi-Fi? And so for me, that conversation becomes very interesting when we talk about cities and others. Is the data is in fact the story. The data is the story for the movement of goods, people, and services. How do we get equitable access to that data? One of the cities that I'm working with actually had this dawning realization that one of the major companies in the world actually has within its ability, because it controls pricing and it has information and access where everyone's at, through a pricing mechanism, can move traffic massively and dramatically in her city. And suddenly had this oh my gosh moment. That trumps anything with stoplights and sort of others. So the networks can't handle it, which means that the companies are going to be making decisions on what they share or don't share, meaning to themselves or others. And so suddenly you're going to see some FUD, fear and uncertainty, doubt created. We can't share all that because the networks can't handle it. We have to have a conversation about it, but there is appropriate data, and companies like Tesla have figured out what they want, what they need based on their business model. So there are answers, it's just that you require more information, and as Mark pointed out earlier this morning, more understanding of technology to be able to have that basic conversation. Did we really get all of our questions? That's it? Okay. Thank you so very much. I do appreciate it. Have a good day. OH!